Crash Team Racing had a canceled spin-off in 2010 that never saw the light of day until today. And now we get to sit down with David Goodrich, the gameplay designer of this prototype, as we do a deep dive into what exactly happened with this game. And he has given us permission to look at some high quality gameplay that he had from his personal portfolio. Let's talk about it.
Whoa!
What's up guys, Canadian Guy here, and I am back with a brand new CGE exclusive. I am joined by Dave, the gameplay designer for this prototype of CTR 2010, as we get to sit down together and dive deeper with you guys into this infamous Crash Bandicoot project. So why don't you introduce yourself, Dave?
I am David Goodrich. I have been a game designer and game artist / modeler for the last 30 years. I guess I am considered a game veteran at this point, starting out in the PS1 era with Vigilante 8 and Twisted Metal series, but also on Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter for the PSPs, along with True Crime, Wizard 101, a little bit, Pirate 101, MMO, and about 20 other titles, including probably my biggest, which was Where's My Water?
We're going to dive right in because many people not know that at one point there was going to be a reboot of the Crash series around 2010 that was going to be led by Radical, and it was called Crash Landed, and there was going to be a CTR to kind of go with it, right? And you were one of the key people responsible for that development and of this version of CTR. But over the past week, something had happened that was unconventional and I think abrasive might be a good way to put it, a polite way to put it, where an hour of unedited gameplay of the game had come out. So start from the beginning. What happened here?
Yeah, this was quite a shocker. So yes, I was the lead designer on the Crash Team Racing 2010, the only designer actually. Impact Games was on hard times after Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier, and we had quite a bit of layoffs, and the entire team got scaled down to about 8 people. But we landed the, no pun intended, the Crash Team Racing game in an attempt to knock out basically a prototype that would then spin up into a full game that was going to be complementary to the Crash Landed series, which was the reboot of the Crash universe at that point. So how this came about and the interview we're having today is kind of an interesting story, as you alluded to. I keep a bunch of my old game footage up on my YouTube channel for my portfolio, and occasionally I'll pull stuff down and edit it for videos because I'm now streaming these days. I had one particular stream that I was doing about a week ago, and I was showing off the Twisted Metal 5 fan-made game, and I've been helping those guys, and I started kind of riffing on like, hey, here's some cool mechanics you could put in the game, you know, from Vigilante 8. In fact, I carried a lot of these over from Vigilante 8 Second Offense into the Crash Team Racing game. And about an hour into the stream, I pull up my footage of it, of the Crash Team Racing game. And in the brief moment that I was pulling it up and then full screening it, unknown at the time, someone had a screenshot of that. So the next day, I wake up and my phone alerts are blowing up like crazy. And I'm like, huh, one of my videos is popping off. I wonder which one it is. And I look at it and I go, I didn't release the Crash Team Racing game, and there's all these comments in there, and there's 600 views on it already within like 1 hour. And I was just like, oh crap. I was like, something has gone horribly wrong. So I run to the office and I pull up my YouTube dashboard and I look under like copyright stuff. It suddenly has like 5 different things saying, is this your video? What do you want to do about it? And I'm just like, strike. And I went on a big striking spree to like shut it down. I was just like, I was shocked. I was just like, how did this happen? It didn't even occur to me that I got screen sniped on it. And I generally, you know, I occasionally show off this footage, but I don't show off huge chunks of it. I'll show off like 2 or 3 minutes here, or, you know, 5 minutes there, kind of in line with what's already been leaked out there, but not a whole hour of it unedited without any credit, or it was a bit jarring. So after I kind of locked everything down and I was chatting with my chat in my Discord about it, I kind of got the idea I was going to do a stream that night, but this time I was going to put Twisted Metal 5 and Crash Team Racing 2010 on the thumbnail, knowing that these guys were going to show up. I laid a small, trap, so to speak, for them. And that's when went on stream and explained the entire situation and basically said, hey, this wasn't cool. You shouldn't have done this. You know, this is my personal portfolio and there's some sensitive material in there and you don't have my permission to use it. You should have asked first. I probably would have given you a clip here or there about it and even talked to you about it. Did a little public shaming there. And one of the people from the Discord that is tied to the leak reached out to me and said, hey, sorry about this. The leaker was my friend and we feel real bad about this. So I chatted with them and gave them a little bit of a tongue lashing about how uncool this was. They also didn't know that the video was unlisted and not for public consumption, which the original leaker said it was. He said I posted it and it was good to go. So when they invited me to their Discord so I could chat with them about the whole situation, and that's when I started reading the chat from that day that they left up there, and I found out like they had screenshotted it. It was too blurry to read, so they up-resed it. That didn't work all the way, so all the characters that were still blurry in the URL, they went through and were guessing it, and you can see them like trying to crack like a safe code. It's like, I think it's ampersand and 7 and this, and no, that didn't work. I think it's this, and there's like 6 of them going down until they finally got it. And then when they got it, not only did they download the whole video and upload it to their YouTube site, but they also put it on archive sites, and then shared out the link to the community, which is why I got 600 views on that thing in like an hour. So I was not pleased.
It's not a great way for people to get footage of this stuff. I do gotta say, though, I do appreciate you sitting down and doing this interview with me about this, and it's still cool that High Impact was able to land that contract for CTR 2010. Can you tell me a little bit of what was going on beforehand at the studio that then got you the contract? And what were you thinking at the time when you got it?
The owner of High Impact Games had contacts at Activision because he did some Call of Duty stuff for them back in the day. And with High Impact Games not doing too hot anymore, I think he pulled on some of those contacts and managed to land the Crash Team Racing game, which was going to be the complement to Crash Landed. One of the things that kind of saved my job, at least for this particular project, was I had extensive car combat experience, so it kind of earmarked me to work on this title, and I was really excited to do it because we were moving on to the next-gen console with Xbox. High Impact Games has kind of been stuck on PSP games for a while, and I know that they wanted to get back into major console, so I was excited about that, and I was also excited about working on vehicular kart racing, not necessarily combat, and it was well in my wheelhouse. So when I heard we got it, I was like, yes, this is great. But also, we lost like 75% of the team, and people were a little bit down about it. And it was a very small team of about, I want to say, if I remember right, and forgive me, anybody out there watching if I'm wrong, I think we were down to about 8 people on this project.
There's miscellaneous pieces of art for Crash Landed floating around and designs, and some of the things that we've seen was Crash and Dingo Dial. Can you share any of the other designs for the other characters that are beloved that were going to be in the game, maybe?
I cannot. We never got them.
Oh no.
Apparently. I know. We didn't get a lot from Radical on this. Back in the day, I received a bunch of concept art for like the island and the look of how the color palettes were going to be, some of the landscapes and different things like that. But main characters, we got a bunch of Crash character sheets, 2 images of Dingo Dial, also the creatures in which he was composed of. Because from what I've heard, there was a storyline in there about how these creatures were being mutated, and Dingo Dial was obviously half, dingo and half crocodile, and they had the images of the original dingo and the original crocodile, and then Dingo Dial as the final result.
Okay.
We did get a very interesting, well-made cinematic, which I think is what pitched this game to Activision, where it was a David Attenborough kind of style documentary about Crash and the troubles and tribulations he had surviving on the island and the predators he had to avoid, how he got food, and then obviously him interacting with the cuties, I think they call them. One of those images was actually the land shark, concept-wise, and in this David Attenborough documentary they showed us, Crash is walking along the beach and he's kind of looking for debris and food and things like that, and he's finding debris to actually, build little gadgets and stuff that washed up on the shore, because all the tech that he had in this game was basically Gilligan Island style stuff. Plant fiber and bamboo, but then also, hey, a bottle washed up on the shore, and I can combine these two things to make a little gadget to help me in, my adventures on the island. So he's walking along the beach, and then you see the shark fin out in the water going, and I remember Crash kind of looks out there and sticks his tongue out or taunts the shark in some way, and the surprise moment is the shark then dashes up onto the beach and is like wiggling like a worm towards him super fast, and he's like, oh crap, and he's running and he climbs up a coconut tree, and the shark even goes like halfway up the tree but can't get all the way up, and then just drops, and eventually it goes back in the ocean and just side eyes him. And it was a really cool looking video, and it was narrated by this guy with his British voice and everything, and it was really funny. I thought it was great. But that, and I want to say about 30 pieces of concept art. Most were just about rocks and trees and stuff, and not a lot of character stuff. That's pretty much all we got. Everything else, from there on out, we kind of had to wing it. The characters that we were going to try to initially get out was Crash Bandicoot, Tanya, Dingodile, Dr. Neocortex, Koala Khan. We were putting in the grenade plant. That was just a fauna, flora on the island, because we were desperate for characters. Entropy, Ripperoo, Papa Papu, Bandicoot Swarm, or Bandicooty Swarm, Land Shark, and Tiny Tiger.
So did you receive any models, and was Land Shark supposed to be a character? Like, did they say, oh, we want this shark as a character?
No. No, we did not. We worked off, I think we might have gotten a Crash model. And maybe, I would say 50% chance we also got the Dingodile, but everything else was modeled off of the concept art that we got. And Landshark was not supposed to be a character in CTR. We were supposed to get a steady stream of like character concepts, but they never really came, and we couldn't build them based on the art style that they were using because they hadn't made it yet. I kind of made the call to be like, hey, we're going to grab all the character art that we have and turn these into characters for Crash Team Racing, at least placeholder now, and then we can swap them out later as we get the real characters coming in. I also made the call to put Polar in there because he was easy to make and had kind of a neutral art style that you could look at it and be like, oh, that kind of fits the Crash Landed art style, but it wasn't gonna set up any major flags. So we modeled and built him and stuck him in. I also had plans for, you're going to laugh at this one, I found this last night. One of the carts was going to be driven by the cuties, and it was going to be a pile of them in there. And they're going to, two are like driving, holding the steering wheel, one's pushing the gas, there's another one who's pulling out the weapons and throwing them. And their special was even going to be, when they get close to a car, like 15 of them would jump off onto the car, the other car, and just start, ripping it apart like a Gremlins, and wiping out the vehicle that way, and then before they kind of, all jump back into the car. I don't know if we could have pulled it off. This was just a note in the design doc. We kind of had fun with the characters that we shoved in there because we had no choice. If you look at like the Land Shark, it's really funny because if you think about sharks swallowing everything, like the old Jaws movies were like pulling out license plates and stuff, every weapon he has, he like pulls out of his stomach, which I thought was hilarious. We didn't get a lot from them, so we just had to keep moving to kind of keep things on schedule.
Sometimes you also can come up with genius ideas, right, when the pressure is on. But you still need more than just rocks and fauna for art, right? So looking at the footage that we have here that you posted, what would you say was the defining feature that you wanted to execute in this game? Like, if there was one thing that make it stand out among all the other kart racers, then, and I guess even today, what was the thing that you were trying to get with this game?
Yeah, we really wanted to capture the essence of the Crash Team Racing games. So, we wanted to do an homage to them as best we could, but we also kind of the new defining feature we wanted in there to kind of make it stand out was having all these different kinds of tires and engines and customizing your kart, which would then open up new routes in the actual track itself. If you went and got like the octopus tires and put that on your car, you can then drive on walls and ceilings and take a completely different route from everybody else that you were racing against. That, along with a very unique track design, is something we wanted to be the signature for this, because you could drive on water or drive on walls, or At one point, we were even planning for mud and driving underwater on the sea floor and jump up into new areas. As you saw with the crab tires, you could drive on the sand, but no one else could drive there because it would cut their speed in half. These were all going to be craftable items. You would, as you drive through, you'd pick up crates and you'd randomly get items like an octopus or glue or things like that. And then at the end of the race, you could put them together and that would unlock the octopus tires. It was a crafting system that was kind of following what Radical's idea of Crash putting all these items together, like a bottle and fireflies to, or a frog in the bottle kind of thing to, get a grabber. We tried to kind of follow suit with that, allowing you to actually gather and create basically your own cart. Huge set of players up to I think we were planning 32 at one point, but it was 16 initially, allowing these large, groups of people to split off, but then re-merge at certain points on the track to mess with each other was kind of like what we were really trying to make the nugget of what was going to make this, the signature part, what makes this different from all the other Crash Team Racing games.
The track itself, it was a set track, but there was a whole bunch of alternate routes that were all dependent on your engine or wheels, right? So you weren't necessarily constantly racing, like you were racing with everybody, but not necessarily in the exact same path. And if someone didn't have the right prerequisite on their cart, they couldn't take specific paths.
Correct. Or they could take the path, but it would slow them down quite a bit. If you see some of the video where someone drives into the sand without the crab tires, they start to slow down. But if you have the frog engine that allows you to hop super high, you can actually overcome it a little bit. Not as good as the crab tires, but you could hop along and try to make use of that route. And we try not to separate people too much if they don't have the right attachments to use a specific part of a track. We'd split them off briefly and then always have them remerge into a main track again so that they could interact and fight each other and use power-ups on each other if they wanted to.
Now, we've been talking about the carts and their unique tires and engines, but what about the characters? Did they contribute to the racing at all? Did they have special abilities, or did they change the stats? Is there anything that was going on that part?
Yes. All characters we're going to have a unique special. As you can see, Polar creates a giant snowball under him and then running on top of it like a circus bear, and he gets a big speed boost and it instantly flattens anybody it hits. Crash did his signature spin, and he would also get a big speed boost and could just wipe anybody out as he went along. And I think it was even going to deflect attacks that were coming at him while he was using it. Landshark would grab people with his mouth and then shake them around and then throw them behind him. We also saw that Dingo Dial had a flamethrower in there, a wide sweep of that, and that wipes out anybody in front of him. That, and then yes, every character also had a weight class too. So you would have light characters who could get shoved around easier, but they had better acceleration, or really heavy characters, as you might expect, had poor acceleration, but maybe a higher top speed and could shove people around much easier who was smaller than them. The carts and the base cart always had the exact same weight, but the character that was in it would influence whether they could be shoved around or they could shove other people around. So Landshark and Dingo Dial could easily shove Crash and Polar around because they were much smaller characters. It allowed them to bully, but then I started to create items on that you can mod onto the car that would allow smaller characters to fight back. Like if you liked Polar's special and obviously thought he was cute, then you could give him the warthog frame, and then that would put him into the heavy class and actually allow him to shove Dingo Dial and Landshark around much easier than he normally could. And that one could also open up new tracks and avoid certain hazards too. And then we also had long-term plans of not only modding the car itself, and there was other modifications in there that I'll talk about in my video, such as hood ornaments and the hood itself. We were going to have the certain items be able to put on the characters themselves. So Crash could wear a racing helmet or goggles, and then that would give him a slight modification. Nothing as much as the cart. Maybe if he's wearing the goggles and he hit the smoke screen, the effects of that would clear out 10% faster than it would for a character that wasn't wearing those. We could give Landshark a black leather jacket, racing jacket, and he would get a 1% boost on his acceleration or off of a trick. How that was going to work eventually, don't know, but there was plans for that type of stuff if this particular game could have carried on.
So you mentioned this earlier, but I gotta rewind and double check. Did you say that there was 16, but there was a chance you guys were gonna go up to 32 racers?
That was a proposal of mine, because as we were building out the game and we had 16 people in there and we saw how they split off when they were given different tires, it's like, we might be able to put more people in here. That was a proposal, and I definitely had an email in there that I was looking at that said, I think we can push this bigger, but let's explore it later.
You can look at gameplay and you can get, you might be able to see 70% of mechanics just by looking at it. But were there other mechanics that were either they weren't shown in the 1 hour gameplay, or that there was something that you had initially planned that maybe didn't make it or was almost being implemented? Were there any at all?
Yeah, there was quite a few. I had a bunch of more engine types in there, mod attachments. We were going to push things into, snowy areas and muddy areas, as I mentioned earlier. We also had some team modes that I was exploring where you could do 8v8 or 4v4v4 against each other, and there would be special team mechanics / stunts / maneuvers that you could then perform with your teammates on the other team to get, a bit of an advantage or wipe them out. We were going to have the same level like the one you saw, but then we were going to put it at nighttime, or then we were going to add fog to it, or then we were going to do rain. And that would actually change how the track played, because if you got the night version or the fog version, then you wanted basically the fog lights on the car, because then that, it reduced it to down to like 10% opacity. But anybody else who didn't have it, basically they were driving blind and they had to follow the line on the track or whatever during the fog patches in order to make it. I didn't want to be so restrictive to say you have to have this, but it definitely would give you advantages at that point. We were going to put in vibrating rumble strips kind of on the side of the main road. So if you were at a night time or going through fog and you didn't have the lights, at least you would get some feedback on the controller that you're about to go off the track. We had a drafting mechanic where you could get behind a teammate, or in the current build, an enemy, and if you could hold that position for a second, you would start to see an airstream coming off of them. If you could hold it on for another second, it would then give you a super boost, and then you could zip around them and pass them like that. So we had a bunch of drafting mechanics in there. We also have some special ones that I'll mention in my video with the team drafting. Completely new mechanics that haven't been seen in kart racing before. And then on top of that, we also had the drifting one where you could do a small hop, and then as you push to left or right so you can steer which way it went, your tires would start to heat up, turn red, and then they would burst into fire, which was kind of hilarious considering the tires were crabs and pufferfish. These living creatures lit on fire as they're
Screaming.
going. Yeah. And if you could hold that long enough, it would then move to stage 2 and it would become like a blue flame. We were playing with the idea of it could just endlessly keep going up. It would go blue, then white, and then, purple or whatever. And the flames would get bigger so that you would get like an insane boost if you could hold it. And I was planning on building, circular tracks that would just loop and loop and loop. So you could go into like an endless drift to hit the maximum, and just at the end of that, hit a massive straightaway or go off and jump and kind of lean into that mechanic. You can see the base versions of the red to blue in the video and the drafting in there, but we were hoping to push that even farther for some of the crazier tracks. I know we had achievements starting to come in games, but I had achievements planned out for CTR 2010. When you perform a certain amount of moves, you would unlock an achievement for it, and then that achievement would unlock more customizations for your car. So the achievements would be like draft 20 times in a race, or flatten 20 carts, perform 20 stunts. By doing, chasing these different achievements, you can unlock more and more stuff to customize the car with, and potentially new tracks, which I thought was pretty cool.
I really wish we could have seen that. That would have been something that's really cool. Could you expand on the stunts and the tricks aspect and what that did?
Yeah, so I had the idea of whenever characters go airborne for enough time, that they could do basically a stunt where they could push left, push right, push forward, or back very quickly while I think hitting a button, and the character would perform a unique trick for each direction you did. If you were airborne long enough, you could string them together. And in fact, I had like a kind of like a streak bonus in there. Every trick you did that was not the same as the last one, it would give you more of a boost when you landed. So if you did one trick and you landed, you would get a pretty good boost. But if you did a forward and then a left, and then a backwards before you landed, then you would get a super boost, and it would continue to stack, and you'd just get more and more boost. I was, having ideas like maybe you're driving up a volcano mountain, around the outside of it, and then at the very top, you go airborne for like 10 seconds, and you're just tricking all the way down. So when you land, there's like a huge straightaway, and it's just everybody's trying to get as many tricks in as they can before they hit the ground and just boost and just, go super boost. And it would be a pretty fun, exciting moment there. You didn't finish a trick before you hit the ground, and you were in mid-trick, you would wipe out at that point. So there was a little bit of risk versus reward there. And it worked really well with the frog engine. Everybody can only trick off of small ramps and stuff, but if you have the frog engine, you could jump, and there was a very slim moment in there where you could actually get an auto trick in there, land, and then get a boost out of it. So that engine had some extra bonuses to it beyond just being able to jump into like a new area that other people couldn't drive up into.
Did you have like because we see that one track, did you have plans for any other unique tracks?
We had plans for not only the beach track, but basically up a mountain. We had a desert track in there at some point. We had kind of icy mountain track. We were starting to kind of expand beyond just the island there. I'm assuming that I may have gotten a little bit of storyline from Radical back in the day, that a lot of this gameplay wasn't just going to be on the island, where you're eventually going to move over into the different sections as the story progressed. So I was just taking a stab of like, okay, let's have an icy track. Okay, let's have one that's, in the middle of a jungle that's all mud and things like that. Tracks we had planned was Blizzard Bluff, Cocoa Park, Cortex Castle, Crash Cove, Dingo Canyon, Dragon Mines.
These are all the tracks from PS1.
Yeah, I think we were planning to do nods to all of these.
So you guys were going to do like a 2010 version of these tracks.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to the fact that we weren't getting the material we needed quick enough from Radical at the time. So we were just looking back at the old stuff and saying, let's do this. This is what we're going to start aiming for at this point. And then as we get stuff coming out of Radical, we'll just retrofit a lot of the stuff. We were looking at the old stuff as kind of our North Star to keep moving on the project. Whether all these were going to happen, probably not. Would Blizzard Bluff, we'd probably do a nod to it, but it probably would have been called something else. And then we would have, put snow effects in, and then icy roads, and put in a whole new type of tire or modification for your kart to give you an advantage there.
All of this looks great. So I gotta ask the inevitable question: what happened?
That's an interesting one too. That it kind of blindsided us. So my understanding is, and watching one of your videos too, kind of fills in the gaps where I guess some key people left Radical at the time, and the project kind of screeched to a halt, and then tried to gain its footing under some new leadership. Don't know exactly what happened. But having worked in the industry as long as I had my suspicions that something was afoot, basically, when all we're getting is some really pretty concept art and that great documentary video at the beginning, but then really nothing else. And I remember we were waiting for a Coco design for it felt like a month, and it could have been a month. And, to get the next character going, it just wasn't coming. And that's where I was just like, you know what? Let's just grab all the animal concept art and turn them into characters. Let's just keep this train moving, because we want to get this game out and try to save High Impact Games at the same time. There was a day when the producers came in and chatted with the boss, and they kind of gave us a speech, and they're just like, hey, we're really sorry. The game you guys made is fantastic. Activision loves it. We're super happy with it. But this was like a supplemental thing to Crash Landed, and we just shut down that project. So unfortunately, we're going to have to shut down this project. And it was heartbreaking. It was like, oh crap. Like, I came up with some amazing mechanics for this stuff that is never going to see the light of day, of course, until now. Some of the stuff, as we talked about, some of the drifting and drafting and the ability to drive on walls was like 10 years ahead of Mario Kart 7 and 8. It was amazing. Even like the full loadout of modifications, like changing tires, changing body, changing, they're not one-to-one, but it was interesting. And I was actually chatting with some of my Blizzard buddies, and I showed them a little bit of the footage, and they're just like, that's like one-to-one for Mario Kart 8. And they're like, when does it come out? And I go, oh, we were working on it like 2009. And he goes, I wonder if one of your people or one of the Activision people after this got canceled went over to Nintendo and basically gave them the full download of this game. And I was like, God dang it, Nintendo. You can't copyright my stuff now. I came up with it first.
So even though there was the rumor or the suggestion that Crash landed, the leadership was gone, did you hear any more details as to why?
No, not really. We didn't have much communication with Radical. It was really the Activision producers would get stuff from them and pass it to us. They were kind of the go-between the two studios. So communication was not really going there, at least as far as I know. As much as industry experts out there want to say, I know exactly what's going on at Activision. I know exactly what's going on in, Nintendo and stuff. Nobody really knows. There's so many NDAs out there, and there's so many industry secrets. So what was happening at Radical, I had no insight into it other than what they told us there. And then, after the fact, that pretty much laid off the team there at High Impact Games, and I immediately picked up a job out in Texas working on Pirates 101. But I never looked back at the situation after that and just kind of kept forging along in my career.
How long did you work approximately on this CTR build?
Yeah, I actually looked at, I found some dates on it. It looked like it was about 4 to 5 months worth of work for an 8-person team. So it started in late 2019 and wrapped up right at the beginning of 2010.
You alluded to this earlier when it came to the kind of getting like the different parts for the crafting system. Did you have any idea as to the plot or story would be for the game? Because I know kart racers, there's the story is not the main concern, but there's sometimes a loose plot put together. Did you know any sort of story or plot for the game, or if it was just your own ideas for where you would take it?
We were planning on having a very light story in there, as you might expect. And we were going to have some boss battles in there along the storyline, but there was going to be a progression all the way through where you would meet up with a character. There'd be like a quick cinematic. They would challenge you. You would race them. You beat them. And then you do a couple of generic races before you met the next boss, until you eventually got to the end of the cup at that point. But it was very light and completely unfleshed out. That probably would have happened immediately after we got the green light on this prototype.
Do you have any stories that you would want to tell specifically about your time on it? Maybe something positive or negative or something that stood out to you? Anything related to that whatsoever that you would want to share with everybody?
The negative aspect of it is, the team was a little bit down after losing, so many other team members. And we were definitely under the gun to try to get this thing to work and kind of save High Impact Games. It was a really fun project. Like, I really enjoyed this. I hadn't done a complete kart racer before. I've worked on like all the Vigilante 8 series, Star Wars Demolition, Twist Metal Black Online, Small Brawl. So I really enjoy making these type of games, and getting a chance to do that again and then really push the boundaries of like what this type of game could do was really fulfilling. And it kind of made it heartbreaking when it all kind of came crashing down. And to do it with like an 8-person team is great. I know you say like it's impressive for an 8-person team, but smaller teams have a tendency to do better. We made Vigilante 8 with 4 people, and that thing went on to sell 1.5 million copies. Yeah, like we made some bank for Activision on that one. Small, lean teams have a tendency to get things done very quickly.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for this interview. What have you been up to lately, and where can people find you?
It's called Goodrich Games, and I'm sure you'll provide a link for that. And
I will.
Yeah, I kind of fell into streaming about 2 years ago. I was working at a company that was making Twitch games for Twitch streamers to play with their audience. So as part of the job, we had to stream, and I was just like, I'm not that interesting. I'm an old dude who plays who made a bunch of video games, and I kind of got the idea of like, well, at least I could probably stream my old games and talk about them. That might give me a little bit of a boost and give me at least a topic to talk about, instead of going and playing Minecraft and trying to compete with that crowd and be like, hello, fellow kids. I can do the Minecraft too. It was just dumb. And so my tiny little channel grew from like 20 people, and I think I'm now just over 2,000, which is not bad considering all I do is just old retro game streaming and just the games that I made. I'm also going to be doing a more in-depth video on Crash Team Racing 2010, discussing the mechanics and some other things we didn't discuss here. So if you want to check that out, you're more than welcome to come over and see that. I know you cover a lot of Crash Bandicoot stuff on your channel, but I also see that you cover a lot of Spyro stuff too. So I thought I would give you this extra clip for you to put into the video. I used to hang out with a lot of the OG Naughty Dog and Insomniac guys. In fact, a couple of them were roommates of mine, and I would occasionally ask them to sign stuff, and I asked them to sign at one of the E3s, Spyro 1, and Spyro 2. They actually have the signatures of Dan Johnson on them too, if you know anything about Mr. Johnson and how he appeared in the Ratchet and Clank series throughout the years. And I had worked at a couple other places too. But then also the lead programmer was my roommate for a number of years. I think I was even best man at his wedding. So hopefully your audience gets a kick out of that and they enjoy that, and be chatting with you in the future.